This introductory film is based upon the mark scheme for question 1 of the mock exam that you have just undertaken. The question, written here at the top: what do sources A and B show about changes in the way doctors in England found out about a patient's health? Explain your answer using sources A and B. Now, obviously, initially your job is to read that question once, then read it a second time, identifying the key parts of the question that drive the task that you have to do. What do sources A and B show? So you're going to have to deal with both of those sources. Therefore, at least it's going to require 2 paragraphs. There's 8 marks, so developed writing is required. Now, we've been told you that what we're essentially looking for here is comprehension and inference. But reading the mark scheme is going to illuminate just more of what the marker is actually looking for. Okay, so in the first level descriptor here, what the students for 1 or 2 marks are going to write: our candidates offer general comment about the changes without providing support from the sources. So in other words, you're talking from your own knowledge about the differences in medical treatment between the 2 periods. Okay, so for example, doctors in the 20th century used more technology. Now, to move on, level 2, marks 3 to 6. The candidate states that the change occurred in England based on an explanation of the situation in each source. So, offers statements based on detail from the source or sources and from their own knowledge. E.g., source A shows that doctors in England in the 14th century looked at the colour of a patient's urine, and they would try to see if the patient's humours were unbalanced. Whereas in B, there is a more scientific check of the body's organs, or explains that source A shows that doctors looked at the colour of the patient's urine, but source B shows that tests are now much wider used. What this clearly shows, however, is that they are not simply spending a lot of time telling us what the source already tells us. There is a degree of analysis going on. Too many of the people that scored poorly in this particular question are scoring poorly because what they're essentially doing in these lower level here, or the lower marks of level 2, is they are simply telling me what the source already tells them in their own words. In other words, it's simply comprehension. There is no telling me what they understand from the content of the source. Level 3, 7 to 8 marks. Candidates make an inference. This isn't mentioned on level 2. Therefore, any inference that is being made immediately has us looking at the highest level on the mark scheme, about the nature or extent or change in England based upon the explicit use of both sources. So any inference based upon both the sources hits the higher level. Now, going back to the question and the guidance that you were given, you were initially told that the 8-mark question required you to comprehend and infer. You've practiced this on the German questions, which were 4 marks, and if you infer, you hit the higher model, the higher part of the response. The question clearly here says, what do sources A and B show you? All you had to do is tell me what they show you, tell me what you can infer, and you hit the higher level. Therefore, reading the level 3, 7 to 8 marks, candidate makes an inference about the nature or the extent of change, how much change has taken place between the 2 periods, using both sources supported by their knowledge from the historical context that they've been taught. E.g., explains that source A shows how doctors looked at the colour of the patient's urine because doctors in England in the 14th century studied the symptoms of disease and tried to fit them into Galen's ideas, but that by the late 20th century, understanding was more scientific. Also that source B shows how tests became much wider ranging and made use of technology to detect internal organs as well as external symptoms. They refer to both sources, and they comprehend, and they infer, and they place them in their correct context, i.e. they do exactly what the question asked them to do at the start.